I never thought I'd still be working in my 70s, especially not at a McDonald's, wearing a visor and serving coffee to people half my age. But life has a strange way of humbling you, doesn't it? I used to wake up before the sun, the air cold and quiet, the world still half asleep. My knees would ache when I got out of bed, but I'd push through it, because I had to. I'd dress slowly, pull on my uniform, and head out into the dark. Gripping the steering wheel with both hands, whispering little prayers to myself. Just one more day, Ruth. Just one more. I wasn't working for me anymore. I was working for them. My family. You see, my son had lost his job a couple of years back. He, his wife, and their 2 kids, my grandbabies, moved into my house just for a few months. That's what they said. A few months turned into a year, then 2. Bills piled up, groceries got expensive, and suddenly, the only one bringing in money was me. So I took the morning shift at McDonald's. It wasn't much, minimum wage and a small employee meal discount. But it helped. It kept the lights on, the heat running, the Wi-Fi paid, and the kids' streaming services active. They couldn't go a day without their cartoons and video games. I told myself I was doing it for them, for my family. That's what love does, right? It keeps giving, even when you've got nothing left. The first few weeks were hard. My back screamed, my feet swelled, and my hands cracked from washing so many dishes. But every time I thought about quitting, I pictured my grandkids' faces, their laughter filling the living room, their soft, "Love you, Grandma," before bed, and I'd keep going. The young kids I worked with called me Miss Ruth. Some of them were sweet. They'd help me carry boxes or mop the floor when they saw I was struggling. Others just looked at me like I was invisible, like I was some sad old lady who'd missed her chance in life. Maybe I was, but I had a purpose, and that was enough to get me through each shift. I remember one morning, it was snowing hard. Roads were slick, and the wind bit right through my coat. I almost didn't make it out of the driveway, but I couldn't call out. We needed that paycheck, so I drove through that storm, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. When I walked into McDonald's, my manager, a 20-something boy with tattoos and too much cologne, said, "Miss Ruth, you actually showed up?" Half the crew called off. I smiled through chattering teeth. "Someone's got to make the coffee." It was funny. I was older than his mother, but he was my boss. That didn't bother me, though. What mattered was getting through each day. One fry basket, one mop bucket, one paycheck at a time. When I'd come home, I'd be exhausted. The smell of grease stuck to my hair, my clothes. I'd hang up my coat and listen to the sound of the TV. Always loud, always something streaming. My son would be in his recliner scrolling through his phone. My daughter-in-law would be in the kitchen, door closed, watching her shows on her tablet. The kids would barely look up. Dinner was usually leftovers. Sometimes I'd eat standing up, leaning against the counter, too tired to sit. I'd tell myself, it's okay. This is what family does. You help when they need you. But deep down, something started to ache in a different way. Not my back or my knees. Something deeper. The kind of ache that comes when you start to wonder if anyone even sees what you're doing. One night, after another long shift, I came home and found a note on the fridge. My son had written, "Mom, the Wi-Fi bill's due tomorrow. Can you cover it? We'll pay you back soon." I stared at that note for a long time. The next morning, I woke up before dawn and went back to work, that note still sitting heavy in my heart. At McDonald's, I smiled through every order. "Good morning. What can I get started for you?" I said it 100 times, maybe more, but inside I was tired. Tired in a way that no nap could fix. Still, I didn't stop. I couldn't. Because in some small, quiet corner of my heart, I still believed things would change. That one day they'd see everything I'd done for them and say, "Thank you, Mom. Thank you for keeping us going." But that day never came. At least, not then. And as I looked out the window of that McDonald's one early morning, the sky just starting to lighten, I realized something. Maybe love isn't about being thanked. Maybe it's just about showing up, even when no one notices you're there. Still, I couldn't shake the thought, how long can a heart keep showing up before it starts to break? There's something strange about routine. You get used to it even when it's slowly breaking you down. Each morning my alarm would go off at 4:15 a.m. I'd swing my legs off the bed, feeling that sharp ache in my knees that reminded me I wasn't young anymore. The house would be silent except for the hum of the heater. Sometimes I'd peek into the living room before leaving. My son asleep on the couch. The kids sprawled across their blankets, tablets still glowing faintly from the night before. I'd sigh softly and pull the blanket up over their shoulders before heading out into the dark. There was a comfort in that drive to work. The stillness of early morning, the empty streets, the quiet hum of the radio. I used to think during those drives, maybe I'm doing the right thing. Maybe this is what family is for. At McDonald's, the lights were always harsh, too bright for tired eyes. The air smelled of fries and syrup, and the floor was always just a little sticky. I'd clock in, tie my apron, and start brewing coffee. The regulars would trickle in, construction workers, nurses, delivery drivers. Some of them would smile at me and say, "Morning. Miss Ruth, you're always here early." And I'd smile back, "Someone's got to make sure you get your caffeine fix." They didn't know that the woman handing them their coffee was barely making enough to keep the lights on at home. But it didn't matter. It felt good to be seen, even if it was just by strangers. One of my co-workers, a young girl named Haley, would sometimes talk to me while we restocked the sugar packets. She was 19, full of energy and dreams. "Miss Ruth," she said once, "you remind me of my grandma." "She's tough too," I chuckled. "Tough or stubborn?" She laughed. "Both." Those little moments made the day easier. We'd chat between orders, and sometimes I'd sneak her a biscuit if the manager wasn't looking. She'd always say, "You don't gotta do that." But I'd wink and say, "Honey, I've been feeding people my whole life. It's what I do." By the time my shift ended, the world outside would be wide awake. Kids heading to school, cars honking, sunlight spilling across the parking lot. I'd sit in my car for a minute before heading home, rubbing my hands together to warm them. When I'd get home, no one would be there to greet me. The house was quiet except for the hum of the TV. Dishes from the night before still in the sink. Cereal bowls left on the counter. My son's jacket tossed on the chair. I'd stand there for a long moment, just looking at it all, then roll up my sleeves and start cleaning. I told myself I didn't mind, but I did. There's a loneliness that hits harder when you're surrounded by people who don't see you. It's not the kind that comes from being alone. I could handle that. It's the kind that comes from giving everything and feeling invisible anyway. One night, my back was hurting worse than usual. I'd been on my feet for nearly 8 hours. And when I got home, the kids were arguing over the TV. My son was sitting there, scrolling through his phone like he didn't even hear them. I asked, "Sweetheart, can you help me bring in the groceries from the car?" He didn't even look up. "Can it wait, Mom? I'm in the middle of something." It was like a tiny crack forming in glass. Small, quiet, but once it's there, it spreads. I brought the bags in myself. 3 trips. By the time I finished, my back felt like it was on fire. I leaned against the counter and looked at my hands. Wrinkled, trembling slightly. I thought of all the things those hands had done. Held babies, cooked meals, cleaned homes, wiped tears, and now they were bagging fries for teenagers who didn't even make eye contact. Later that night, I overheard my daughter-in-law on the phone in the next room. Her voice was hushed, but I caught a few words. She means well, but it's just temporary, right? Temporary. That word hit me like a punch. I realized I was temporary in my own home. Just a placeholder, a safety net until they got back on their feet. But months went by, and they never did. Bills kept coming. The electric company sent a warning notice. I used my paycheck to cover it, even though it meant cutting back on groceries. I told them not to worry about it. I've got it handled. But each time I said that, a small part of me felt a little more tired. At work, I'd see families come in together, moms and dads laughing with their kids over pancakes. It was such a simple thing, but it stung. I'd bring their food to the table and watch them for a moment, remembering what it felt like when my family wanted me around. Haley noticed one day. "Miss Ruth, you okay? You seem sad." I smiled weakly. "Just tired, sweetheart," she frowned. "You shouldn't work so hard. Don't you have family to help you?" I wanted to laugh. Family? The very reason I was here in the first place. But I didn't say that. I just said, they've got their own things going on. That night, I went home and sat in my car a little longer than usual. The porch light was off. The living room curtains were drawn. I could hear laughter inside, but not mine. I looked at my reflection in the car window. I barely recognized her. A woman with tired eyes, a deep sadness hidden beneath her polite smile. I whispered, "When did you become a stranger in your own family?" It wasn't self-pity. It was just realization. Still, the next morning, I got up again. I tied my shoes, put on my uniform, and drove to work. Because that's what I did. That's what mothers do. But as I poured another pot of coffee that morning, something inside me shifted. A quiet thought, one that scared me at first. What if they never appreciate it? What if this, all of this, never changes? The thought lingered with me all day. It followed me home, whispered in my ear as I scrubbed dishes and folded laundry. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window watching the streetlights flicker, and I realized I'd spent my whole life giving time, money, love, energy, but no one ever stopped to ask what I needed. Maybe for once it was time to ask myself that question. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. It was still dark, the kind of quiet that feels almost sacred. I sat on the edge of my bed for a while, staring at the wall. My body felt heavy, but my mind wouldn't rest. I thought about the word temporary again, and how it had quietly built a home inside my chest. When I walked into the kitchen, the house was already buzzing. My son was pacing with his phone pressed to his ear, muttering about bills and rent. My grandkids were arguing about who used up all the Wi-Fi. My daughter-in-law sat at the table scrolling through her tablet, coffee in hand. No one noticed me standing there. I made myself some tea, quietly moving around them like a ghost in my own home. At one point, I dropped a spoon, and it clattered to the floor. That's when my son looked up. "Mom, could you maybe keep it down? I'm on a call." That was it. No good morning. No thank you. Just a reminder that I was in the way. I bent down, picked up the spoon, and said softly, "Sorry." It's strange how that one word, sorry, can become a habit. You start saying it even when you haven't done anything wrong. I finished my tea, grabbed my worn-out purse, and headed to work. The air was cold, sharp enough to sting my cheeks. When I got to McDonald's, Haley was already there, tying her hair into a messy bun. "Morning, Miss Ruth," she said cheerfully. "You okay?" I smiled faintly. "Just another day, honey." As the day went on, I couldn't shake that heavy feeling. Even the sound of the fryer or the chatter of customers couldn't drown it out. I started to wonder what it would feel like to just stop. To stop giving, stop fixing, stop being everyone's safety net. Around lunchtime, a man came in with his daughter, maybe 6 years old. She had pigtails and a big smile, and she looked at him like he was her whole world. They sat by the window sharing fries and laughing at something on his phone. I watched them for a long moment. My chest tightened, not from envy, but from memory. That used to be me. That used to be my family. After my shift ended, I sat in my car again. My paycheck was small, but I had already mapped out where every dollar would go. The electric bill, groceries, a few school supplies for the kids. Nothing left for me. That night, I decided to talk to my son. I needed to. When I got home, he was sitting on the couch watching TV. I sat down beside him and said, "Sweetheart, can we talk for a second?" He muted the TV, eyes still on the screen. "Sure, what's up?" I hesitated. I wanted to ask if you've been looking for more work. Things have been tight lately, he sighed. Mom, I'm trying, okay? You don't have to worry about it. I'm not trying to nag, I said gently. It's just, I'm getting tired, honey. I can't keep doing this forever. He looked at me then. Really looked at me. And for a second, I thought he understood. But instead, he said, Mom, you don't have to work if it's too hard. We'll figure something out. The way he said it, like it was just that simple, made me want to laugh and cry at the same time, because I knew he wouldn't figure it out. Not really. I nodded, not wanting to argue. Later that night, when everyone was asleep, I sat on the porch with a blanket around my shoulders. The moon was bright, casting a silver glow over the yard. I listened to the crickets and thought about all the things I used to dream of. Traveling, starting a little bakery, maybe even writing a book. But life had a way of pushing dreams to the back burner. Still, sitting there, I made a quiet promise to myself. I didn't know how or when, but I was going to find a way to matter again. Not as someone's provider, not as someone's helper, but as me. The next few days felt heavier. My body was slower, my steps smaller. Haley noticed. "You sure you're okay, Miss Ruth?" she asked one morning as we wiped down tables. "I'm just tired, honey," I said. She smiled. "You should take a day off. Treat yourself or something." I chuckled softly. "Days off don't pay bills." She looked at me thoughtfully. "You know, my grandma started painting again after she retired. Said it made her feel alive. You ever think about doing something like that?" That question stuck with me all day. When I got home that evening, I went into my room and opened the old chest at the foot of my bed. Inside were things I hadn't touched in years. Old sketchbooks, a few brushes, some dried-out paints. I smiled a little. I used to love painting. I'd sit for hours, just lost in colors and shapes, forgetting the world around me. I picked up one of the brushes. The handle was worn smooth from years of use. I ran my fingers over it and whispered, "It's been a while, old friend." The next morning, I woke up early again. But this time, I didn't rush. I brewed coffee and sat by the window watching the sunrise. Then, before heading to work, I put a small notepad in my purse. One I could doodle in during my breaks. It felt small, but it was something. At McDonald's, between rushes, I'd sit in the break room and sketch little things. Flowers, coffee cups, faces. Haley would peek over my shoulder sometimes and say, "Miss Ruth, that's amazing." I'd laugh. "It's just doodling, honey." But deep down, it felt like a tiny piece of me was waking up again. Still, the stress at home didn't stop. My son's hours were cut back. My daughter-in-law started complaining about money, and the kids fought more often. Every time the Wi-Fi glitched, they'd yell, "Grandma, the internet's down again." And I'd sigh, knowing it meant another bill I'd have to cover. But that night, something inside me changed. I was sitting on my bed, holding the latest electric bill, and I just started crying. Not loud, not messy, just quiet tears that rolled down my face like they'd been waiting for years to fall. I whispered to myself, "You can't keep doing this." And for the first time, I didn't mean it as a complaint. I meant it as a decision. The next morning, I didn't wake up to my alarm. For the first time in years, I let myself sleep past dawn. The world didn't fall apart. The Wi-Fi didn't go out. The house didn't crumble. I just rested. When I finally sat up, sunlight was spilling across the room. I stared at my hands for a long while. The same hands that had cooked, cleaned, held crying babies, folded endless loads of laundry, and counted out crumpled bills. They looked older, yes, but strong, capable. And that morning, I decided they would work for me for once. I went into the kitchen, made myself a slow breakfast, and ignored the rush of everyone else scrambling to get ready for their day. My son muttered something about a late meeting. My daughter-in-law sighed about groceries, and the kids brushed past me, grabbing snacks. No one asked how I was, but that was okay, because for the first time, I didn't expect them to. I took out my sketch pad and sat on the porch. The air smelled like morning dew and distant coffee. I began to draw the oak tree across the yard. Every twist of bark, every leaf that caught the light, and in that moment something inside me softened. I remembered who I was before exhaustion dulled me down. Later at work, Haley noticed something different in me. "You seem lighter today," she said as we wiped the counters. I smiled. "Maybe I just stopped trying to carry everyone else," she laughed. "Good. About time." During my lunch break, I drew again. This time, a picture of the McDonald's counter, the fryer, the register, and the morning sun shining through the window. I added small details, a customer laughing, Haley tying her apron, the steam from a fresh cup of coffee. When I finished, I realized my hands weren't trembling. They were steady, confident, alive. That evening, as I walked to my car, I saw a flyer taped to the window of the laundromat next door. "Local Artists Community Night. Share your work. All ages welcome." My first instinct was to walk past it. I wasn't an artist. I was a tired grandmother who worked mornings at McDonald's. But something deep inside whispered, "Go." I tore off a little tab with the phone number and tucked it into my purse. That night, after dinner, I sat in my room while the rest of the family watched TV. My son had his feet up. My daughter-in-law scrolled on her phone. The kids laughed at something on YouTube. I sat quietly, sketching by lamplight, pretending not to hear the noise. At one point, my granddaughter peeked in and said, "Grandma, what are you drawing?" I turned the pad toward her. "Just the old oak tree outside," she smiled. "It's pretty. You're really good." Her words were simple, but they warmed me in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. A few days later, I called the number on the flyer. The woman who answered, her name was Carol, told me they met on Wednesdays at the community center. "We'd love to have you," she said. So I went. I was nervous, hands shaking, heart pounding. But the moment I walked in, I smelled coffee, heard laughter, and saw people of all ages painting, sketching, and chatting. It felt like walking into color after years of gray. Carol waved me over. "You must be Ruth," she said warmly. I nodded. "I haven't done this in a long time," she smiled. "Well, art waits for no one, but it never forgets you either." They gave me a small easel, some paints, and a blank canvas. I stared at it for a long time. Then I took a deep breath and began to paint. The first stroke was shaky, the second softer. By the third, I had lost myself completely. The world around me faded. No bills, no guilt, no pressure, just color and breath. When I was done, Carol walked by and stopped in front of my painting. "That's beautiful," she said. I looked at it, an old oak tree standing tall in the morning light. "It's home," I said quietly. From that night on, Wednesdays became mine. I didn't tell my family where I went. They never asked. I just said I had errands, and no one looked up long enough to question it. At the community center, I found something I hadn't realized I'd lost. Belonging. One night, Carol asked me if I wanted to put one of my pieces in their local showcase. I almost said no, fear creeping in. But she insisted. "People need to see your story, Ruth. You have something to say." So I did. I painted a piece called The Morning Shift. It showed a woman standing at a counter, sunlight pouring over her like quiet forgiveness. The night of the showcase, I stood in the back of the small hall, my hands trembling as people walked by, stopping to look at my work. Some smiled, others nodded quietly. But one older man stood for a long time, eyes glassy, before saying, "You painted how I feel every morning." That broke something open in me. because for the first time in years, someone saw me. Not as the helper, the fixer, the grandmother who keeps things running, but as a woman with her own voice, her own pain, her own beauty. When I got home that night, I walked through the door to find my family sitting around the TV as usual. No one noticed me come in. I didn't mind. I walked to my room, set the small certificate I'd received on my dresser, and looked at it for a while. It wasn't much, just a printed piece of paper with my name. But to me, it felt like freedom. As I sat down, my granddaughter came in again. "Grandma, where do you go every Wednesday?" I smiled. "Somewhere I get to remember who I am." She grinned. "Can I come sometime?" I laughed softly. "Maybe one day, sweetheart." That night I lay in bed and let myself feel proud. Not for what I'd done for others, but for what I'd finally done for myself. Still, a part of me hurt, because I knew my family would never really understand what it cost me to keep giving, or how lonely it felt to be invisible in a house full of people. But as I drifted off to sleep, one thought soothed me. Maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to start living again. It was a chilly Saturday morning when everything finally came to a head. I was in the kitchen making myself some tea when my son came down the stairs, his voice sharp and tired. "Mom." He started rubbing his temples. "We need to talk." My heart sank. That tone, I'd heard it before. It usually meant I had done something wrong without realizing it. "What is it, honey?" I asked, setting my cup down gently. He sighed. "We've noticed you've been out a lot lately. Wednesday nights, sometimes Saturdays. Where are you going?" I hesitated. "I go to a little art group at the community center. It's something for me." His brows furrowed. "Art group? Mom, you're 71. You don't need to be driving around late at night for that. You could get hurt. Besides, you should be here, with the kids, helping around the house." That last part stung. Helping around the house. Like that was all I existed for. "I've been helping around this house for years," I said quietly. "I just wanted a few hours for myself." He sighed again, frustrated. "You don't understand, Mom. Things are tight. We're stressed. It just feels like you're slipping away from us." I looked at him carefully. "Slipping away? Or finally standing up?" He blinked, surprised. I don't think he was used to hearing my voice with that kind of weight. "I've spent so long being the quiet one," I continued. "The one who holds everything together, who says yes, even when her body says no. I worked mornings at McDonald's so this family could have internet, electricity, warmth. I gave up my savings, my rest, my peace, and not once did anyone ask if I was okay." He looked down, silent. My hands were trembling now. Not from fear, but from years of swallowing words that finally refused to stay buried. "I love you," I said softly. "More than you'll ever know. But love isn't supposed to erase a person. It's supposed to see them." There was a long pause. My daughter-in-law walked in halfway through, holding a coffee mug. She stopped when she saw our faces. "What's going on?" she asked carefully. I turned to her. "Nothing bad, just truth." For a moment, no one said anything. The silence stretched, thick with all the years of unspoken things. Then my son's voice broke through, quiet and raw. "Mom, I didn't realize. I just thought you liked helping. I thought you needed it." I nodded slowly. "I did. For a long time, I thought if I stayed useful, I'd stay loved. But love shouldn't have to be earned with exhaustion." He blinked hard, and for the first time in years, I saw something like understanding in his eyes. He walked over and pulled me into a hug. "I'm sorry, Mom. I really am." My throat tightened, and I rested my head against his shoulder. "It's okay," I whispered. "Just see me now." That night, things felt different in the house. My son offered to make dinner, and for once I let him. My granddaughter came to my room later, holding her own little sketch pad. "Grandma," she said shyly, "I drew something." I looked at the paper. It was a drawing of me at the kitchen table, a cup of tea beside me, a smile on my face. The details were messy and sweet, the way only a child can draw. "Do you like it?" she asked. I smiled, tears warming my eyes. "I love it, sweetheart. It's perfect." The next Wednesday, my son asked where I was going, but this time there was no edge in his voice. "To my art group," I said. He nodded. "Drive safe, Mom. Want me to save you a plate for dinner?" That small gesture, those few words, felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. At the community center that night, I painted something new. Not the oak tree this time, not the counter at McDonald's. This time I painted my hands, lined, aged, strong, holding a paintbrush dripping with color. Around them, soft golden light. Carol stopped behind me, smiling. "That's beautiful, Ruth. What's it called?" I looked at it, tears glistening in my eyes. "It's called Still Here." Weeks turned into months, and I kept painting, kept working part-time. But more importantly, I kept living. My back still ached some days, my hands still shook, but I didn't feel invisible anymore. Sometimes, I'd catch my family watching me quietly, like they were seeing me, really seeing me for the first time. One evening, as we all sat around the dinner table, my son said, "Mom, we were talking. Maybe you should put some of your paintings online. People would love them." I laughed softly. "Maybe someday." But inside something fluttered. Not pride exactly, but peace. That night I stood by my window, looking out at the dark yard. The oak tree stood tall, its branches swaying gently in the wind. I thought about all the mornings I'd worked just to keep things running. All the moments I'd given up without complaint. And though I knew I couldn't get those years back, I realized something else. They weren't wasted. They were lessons. Every sunrise at McDonald's, every aching step, every quiet tear. It all led me here, to this version of me. A little older, a little wiser, but still standing, still creating, still loving, and maybe that's what life is. Not about being needed every minute, but about learning that you matter even when no one asks you to. If you're watching this and you've ever felt unseen, forgotten, or taken for granted, I want you to know. You still have something beautiful to give. You still have a story that's worth telling. Don't let anyone convince you that your time is over. Because sometimes, the most powerful chapters begin right after everyone else stops paying attention. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It helps our little community of souls who still believe in love, in hope, and in second chances. Thank you for listening. Truly.